So these notes are going to focus on the United States kind of getting its empire. Some of this happens before the Spanish-American War, some of it happens during, but a lot of it does happen after. The key thing that we want to understand is that because of the Spanish-American War, we've already gone over this, the United States gained an empire essentially. And we kind of had to figure out what to do with it. So this is a little bit of background of how we got this giant empire and then what we started doing when we became a world power. So we're going to look at what caused the United States to want this empire and then how we became this world power. So the vocab words that you have to understand, first and foremost, the biggest one is imperialism. Imperialism is simply where one nation dominates another nation. It can be politically, militarily, economically, pretty much any way. This is what we do in the Philippines. We take over the Philippines, we directly administer it. An extractive economy is an economy where raw materials, things like gold, iron ore, cotton, sugar are removed from the colony and then sent back to the country to be used. And then social Darwinism, I hope you understand. We went over this one a little bit. This is the belief that certain nations or races were superior to others, and then they were kind of supposed to rule over other places. So if we take the Philippines, for example, the United States was supposed to rule over the Philippines, according to the 19th century imperialists, because the people from the United States were better. Yes, it is a racist idea, and yes, it will influence a lot of the stuff that happens in the 20th century. So, like we have said, we already have imperialism here. The United States was an imperialist country. We controlled a lot of land that was not technically part of the United States and kind of integrated it into our empire. So the causes of imperialism, we're going to focus mostly on this one for the United States, which is trade. Economic benefit, though, is a big piece. Raw materials and resources. The U.S. does do this, not as much as the Europeans and the Japanese, but we do get some raw materials, sugar, pineapples, cigars from Cuba, stuff like that. But the main reason for America is trade. The United States actually had a surplus. We had too much of stuff. We were making too much stuff in our factories. Our farms were producing too much stuff. So what we wanted were markets where we could sell that stuff, where we could dump all our excess goods and essentially get rid of them and continue to make money. Because as we learned about the 1920s, you don't want your factories to build up this overproduction where then you can't sell your stuff. The other reason for imperialism is the United States wanted military strength. The European nations had very large militaries, especially places like Britain, Germany. They had these very large, very powerful militaries, and the United States wanted to be equal to them. So this guy down here, Alfred T. Mahan, comes up with this idea that naval power is the key to the United States being great. He encourages the United States to build modern steel ships that will be able to compete with the Europeans, go out and get foreign ports and islands. Notice in the Spanish-American War, we grab a lot of islands, Philippines, Guam, Puerto Rico. We're going to see that Hawaii gets added to the United States, and we can use those as military bases to then project our power out into the world. Last piece is national superiority. So these two ideas go together, and this is probably the most complicated piece. Social Darwinism and manifest destiny fit together very easily. Social Darwinism, again, is that idea that some nations are superior to others. It's the destiny of some nations to actually go out and take over other nations and control them. Manifest destiny, though, this is an American idea. This is the idea that Americans were given the responsibility and the right by God to go out and settle this frontier. And what we run into in the late 1800s is that the frontier had been settled in the United States. The Wild West had been tamed. We went over this a little bit too. So the United States didn't have anywhere to expand, and the last place to expand was overseas. Think of the Spanish-American War. It was fought overseas. It was fought in areas that weren't Spain, weren't the United States, because overseas was now the new frontier where Americans could expand into for opportunities. What these do is they encourage Americans to go out and spread their ideas into Asia, into the Pacific. We're going to build our empire there because there's nowhere left kind of on land for the United States to spread. So you can see here the United States, all right, compared to the Europeans, we have very small empires. But we are going to focus on the Philippines. Obviously, we have Puerto Rico down here. We have Guam, real tiny down here, all right? But we are all over the place out in the Pacific. So the way we become world power, I don't expect you to have these memorized, but this just kind of outlines how the United States became a world power. What we began doing is we began expanding into the Pacific. If you notice, most of these places are focused in the Pacific. Japan, edge of the Pacific. Midway Island, middle of the Pacific. Hawaii, Pacific. We get these places. We seize them. We buy Alaska from the Russians. Technically, it's in the Pacific, okay? In Latin America and South America, we just increase our trade because we want those markets, like we said. All of this, if you notice, is about trade and markets. Yes, we can get our military ports. We can get, the areas that we need for bases. But Hawaii provides a market for American goods. Japan provides a market for American goods. Midway Island is a stopping point so ships can refuel. Alaska gives us resources that we can turn into goods to sell. Latin America, we can increase our trade with them. We can increase investment with them. The entire idea is that America will have more areas to sell its surplus goods to make more money and continue to expand. Just some of the pieces of this, United States in Japan, signing the trade treaty. The Great White Fleet, these were those modern battleships that the United States was making, okay? Literally, it was a fleet that was painted white that we sent around the world to show our power. So Hawaii is an interesting kind of case study in this. Since the 1790s, Hawaii had been linked to the United States. There was a very important port there called Pearl Harbor. You can see it where the mouse is right now. We like to use it as a refueling port and for our Navy. There were fruit and sugar plantations all over the place. Sugar was basically worth its weight in gold during this time period. There had been missionaries establishing churches. But eventually what happens, the Americans get enough power that they amend the Hawaiian Constitution. And they make it so only the Americans could vote. So the native Hawaiians, because Hawaii was an independent country, it was its own nation, are no longer in control of their country. The Americans are, okay? So we can see the importance of the sugar plantations here. This was huge money in Hawaii. So what begins to happen? In the 1890s, a tariff was placed on sugar. And technically, since Hawaii was a foreign country, the sugar would now have a tax on it. And the Americans didn't want that. They wanted to be able to ship their sugar to the United States tax-free. Queen Lulukalani, down here in the bottom, she was a Hawaiian nationalist. She wanted to kind of make Hawaii controlled by the Hawaiians again. And she got rid of that constitution that gave all the Americans the power. So she returns power back to the Hawaiians. These planters, led by this guy, Samuel Dole, and I hope you can connect that name. He is the owner of the Dole Fruit Company, where you get your bananas from. He actually organizes a coup, overthrows Queen Lulukalani, and controls the island. So this is like a corporation overthrew a government and takes control of the island. This new government was set up under him, and they asked the United States to annex Hawaii or make Hawaii a part of the United States. This sets off a really big debate that we're kind of going to go over in future units over should the United States take Hawaii or not. Is Hawaii, should it be part of the United States? So what ends up happening, we have this debate. President Harrison was a pro-imperialist. He signs the treaty to take Hawaii, but the Senate said, wait, do the Hawaiians want to be part of the United States? President Cleveland then orders an investigation of it to see if the Hawaiians actually want to be there. They find out that most Hawaiian people do not actually want to be part of the United States, but the United States annexes it anyway. You can see how this is kind of viewed, all right? You have Uncle Sam and Hawaii here, and they're like being forced to be married at gunpoint by Dole. okay? The reason that the United States annexes Hawaii is because Hawaii is being looked at by Britain. It's being looked at by Japan. It's going to get taken over. Everybody knows it, and the United States kind of fears that if they don't take it, someone else will. So you got to think of the two different viewpoints of this. Why would the Americans want Hawaii, and why would the Hawaiians obviously not want